answers, so.
Okay,
Ready, sir?
No
Did
answers.
say no answer? But he started? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Today is November 10th, 7 o'clock, and we're going to have a fire budget for 2021 workshop. We can stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, get the meeting started. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Greg, that meeting, that door needs to stay open.
Ms. Wolf just told me to close it. Because we're talking about staff, and staff sitting in the closet, or sitting in the hallway.
Okay.
Okay, we'd like to have a moment of silence to honor our military, firefighters, road workers, and sheriff's deputies who serve our community here and abroad. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to make a comment first. I'd like to thank Gene Lutz for helping us with our fire budget. It was very nice of him to do that. He's a heck of a man to come back and do that the way he was treated. So I want to thank him for that. And Doug, you want to start the floor and take the floor and start this? You ready for this, or how do you want to do this?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Do roll call.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Thank you, Tracy. You want to start it? Yeah, Tracy, could you do roll call for us, please?
Okay. Trustee McLaughlin,
Present.
Trustee McGuire,
Present.
Trustee Mann. And we also have in attendance Greg Wilcox and Chief Bright, and one citizen, and Mr. Steve Wolf is also in attendance.
Okay. So you got a good agenda here, Doug, because you've done a good job here.
It took the work of, it took the work of several people, several hours to do this. We added a little, cut some. We're trying to make a good budget out for you.
Thank you.
Where do you want to start?
You got the floor, though.
Can I make a comment first?
Yes.
So, your budget is based on last year's salary schedule. Okay, but Mr. Wolf just passed out another proposed payroll allocation schedule. You guys should have it. So, I just want, that's not it. Does he have one?
Yeah, I laid one on everybody's table, if you don't.
It should be there, he probably just doesn't have his one there.
Yeah, one? Nope.
No, I didn't get this one.
All right.
No, you don't think it is.
You need your couple copies? Yeah, if you would.
So it looks like it's a little bit different than what you proposed here. So, just be aware that if they do approve this, that the salaries are gonna change, percentages are gonna change. And it's mostly just, the administrator, assistant administrator, and trustees are not. Percentages change.
I can explain this chart a little bit to trustees if you guys would like that explanation.
Please.
Okay, so when I looked at all your job distributions and what you oversee and shadow as trustees, and I was talking to both the state auditor's office and the county auditor about distribution of allocation of salary. If you do a distribution as you do here in this township, you have to be as close to how much time or responsibility that you have in each of those categories. And so, like for instance, if you come down the road, all three trustees assigned yourselves to the road last year. If that remains the same, your percentages have to stay the same. Mr. McGuire and Mr. Mann was a little less last year, and Mr. McLaughlin was at 80%. for road. So that's why this, that was one of the main reasons why this adjusted. The other thing is, payroll was handled by Adrian Jones
Thank you.
and Tracy Edwards on all departments, and the largest payroll is fire. And obviously, we know that, 30 or 40 employees versus maybe 6 in the road or whatever it might be, and 6 in general, 6.5. So you also have to understand that the duties by the fiscal officer and the duties by the administrative assistant are going to be, has to be weighted based on how much work they do for those other departments. It's not like the departments don't exist, and you have the general fund handling all the departments. So this proposal come forward that I have shows a more true distribution of your work. In general fund, Mr. Mann doesn't have that many responsibilities other than being a trustee in the general fund. Mr. McGuire and Mr. McLaughlin both oversee zoning, and the other gentleman, Mr. McLaughlin oversees code enforcement. Mr. McLaughlin sees the cemetery, or oversees the cemetery. So when, and Mr. McGuire does, I think technology is what he is assigned to do. So you have higher percentages on this chart than what you would have had last year, because we didn't distribute it the way we should have for how much work you do in those accounts. The fiscal officer pays bills in all departments. The highest volume of bills is the road, or is the fire department. And so her distribution needs to be, not her, but the fiscal officer has to be more true to what the departments utilize their services. I realize fire and then myself prepare all the bills for coding ahead of time, but all the bills are paid for by the fiscal officer. Code enforcement over there to the right, it's only going to be 100% for Mr. McKee, because he only comes out of general fund, because that's code enforcement. There is no John Callaghan here, because John is a contracted employee and not a W-2 employee, so there is no salary distribution for him. Chief Wright is going to be 100% fire, that's understandable. And then we manage the lighting district. And I made sure, I know last year there was some question about it, whether you can take distributions out of lighting, but it's not a levy. It's not a police levy. It's not a levied item, it is an assessment item. And you trustees, remember, Mike, all the hours you spent trying to fix that lighting district? We need to take some distribution out of there, but fairly, you 3 trustees voted on the rate increase, or or what you were not increased, but what you decreased the price this year. You handled the lighting district bill that you pay, so that's why there's a little bit coming out of lighting district. Adrian Jones answers the calls that come in asking for lights that are burnt out. I handle or oversee the contract and make sure that our contract is operating well. And taking complaints there as well. So this distribution chart is different from last year. Because of time, this great group, Tracy and Chief and BC, they went ahead using the old distribution just to get the chart done, or just to get us way ahead on this. And they've spent a lot of hours on it. But you trustees annually have to choose your allocation and vote on it in a meeting. So Tracy's right. The numbers that are used here right now for the distribution of trustees, fiscal officer, administrative assistant are going to be a little low versus what the new chart is recommended. But the recommended chart is more to what the auditor has said to me, that needs to be more true to the work that you do. Because there was one question about, why didn't the trustees evenly have their salary coming out of road? And the question was, well, I don't know. We had 10, 10, and 80. And that didn't make sense. When you passed, back in January, you passed that your distribution was going to be equal on that one job. So, that's the proposal in front of you. Tonight is just a work session. You're not voting on anything, you can't vote on anything. So you don't have to make a decision, or you can't make a decision on the payroll allocation tonight. I'd recommend that you can go over the spreadsheet with everybody with the questions that have been posed on the agenda to make sure all those items are in the budget or thought about. And then if you have to make a payroll reallocation, to this budget, you can do it before you accept it. If you don't, you don't. You stay with the old, what you adopted last year. It isn't going to, is not going to ruin the fire department budget. So that's what that's about. So I'll turn it back over to the chief.
Okay, first item, salaries fire chief. You can see that we've allocated for next year 64,000. Fire and EMS staff is 597,000.
Hey Doug, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is column F? Next one to the right there?
That, I can tell you that.
Okay.
That is the paper I just I gave to you about the revenue.
Yeah.
It says levy, beside that, that's the levy, that's the
Oh.
3.75 and the 5.7 levy, that's the amount. The next one is EMS collections,
Okay.
the average of that. The next one is the estimated carryover from this year to next year that we have left over. And the last one is the new levy we just got,
Okay.
5.5. And
Sorry.
the total down farther, that bigger number down farther, the total of those lines.
Okay. Thank you, sorry.
No problem, no problem. Fire and EMS staff, we have 597,000. That's because they increased, we had to increase the salaries in order to get the people. And we are attracting a few more people. The battalion chief, raised that to 50. EMS manager salaries, 0. Maintenance coordinator, we put 45,000 in there because we're trying to get, bring a person on that is, he run out of hours, but to do the maintenance on the vehicles, maintenance on the building, and also be around for fire and EMS runs. So Dayton Fire Garage is eating us up. They're doing us a great job, but as far as parts and labor, they're high. So if we can get somebody in-house to do it to save us money, that's what we need to do. Fiscal officer, we raised that from 5% to 10%.
Well, that's what this sheet is, right? Is that right, Mr. Wolf, the sheet, the proposal?
Well, my sheet is not incorporated in your numbers, so that's what you got, you did on Saturday. You came up with this.
But I mean, these will be.
No, 5%.
If they pass it that way.
All those numbers
But
are
the
changed.
5% to 10% was because this budget was done before they approved the salary in 2020, and then it went to 10%. So
Okay.
that's why this number is 10% instead of 5%. So that 5% on there is not correct, it's 10%.
Okay,
But
thank
of
you.
course, when you guys decide, it may be more.
Payroll clerk is 5%. Administrators 5%. Trustees was 16,500. PERS went from 19,110 to down to 17,570. Social Security went up to 37,014. Medicare went up just $940. It's at 11,940. Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund went down to 12,000 from 18,761. Medical hospitalization went down from 33,000 to 26,000. Teledoc stayed the same as last year at 3,000. Dental insurance is at 3,400. It was nothing last year. Workman's compensation went down from 30,000 to 20,000. Holiday pay stayed the same as last year at 24,000.
Chief, if I can, please.
Sir?
We're looking at completely getting rid of that. This was the holiday pay, the extra $2 an hour for the holidays. Trustee Mann had suggested allowing it to continue through the rest of the year, but discarding it next year since there was a generous pay raise, hourly rate for everybody. The other thing was a call-off incentive that the last chief had thought about. If they do not call off a single shift within a certain period of time, like 6 months, there would be a bonus. So really not sure what will happen to that, where the documentation is or the plan was. So good chance that that can go to 0.
PTO,
What line item are you talking about, Greg?
Number 21 on there, the holiday pay, part-time, no call-off incentive for 24,000. Line number 21.
You're talking about scratching that?
Yes.
yes. Okay, line number 22, the PTO, pay for full-time, 25,500. Stayed the same as this year. Employee reimbursement for mileage went from 15,000 down to 12,000. Auditing services stayed the same as 5,000, same as last year. Uniform county network fees stayed the same, 3,000. Tax collection fees went from $600 to $2,000 for next year. Travel and training services stayed the same as last year. Professional and technical service stayed the same, 3,000. Rent and leases stayed the same at 3,000. Garbage and trash removal went from 8,000 to 3,000.
And that was because of renegotiating the rates with waste management.
Then page 2, the repair and maintenance, fleet maintenance, went from 28,000 to 24,000. Repair and maintenance fleet parts stayed the same at 6,000. Repair and maintenance fleet labor stayed the same at 6,000. Repair and maintenance pump testing, hose testing, and ladder testing went from 2,500 this year up to $6,000.
Chief, if I can.
Go ahead.
On the fleet maintenance, the reason we thought it would go down because of our new medics that have just returned, they're not going to require the maintenance that the old Frasers were. Also down on the fleet labor, the 6,000, we allowed that for in-house of our own people doing the minor maintenance that we would normally take to the Dayton garage for light bulbs and things. So that's what that area is for.
Since you're talking about this, trustees and fiscal officer and fire chiefs, do you want to do an RFP for repairs of equipment after the first of the year? To see if we can find a less expensive, same quality repair besides being, because Mr. Mann has shared so many times how Dayton Garage just has such high rates. They're dependable, but they're such high rates.
Right.
Do you want to look into an RFP at the first of the year? Trustees, do you think that'd be a good idea? Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you, sorry.
Repairs, maintenance on buildings went from 10,000 to 15,000. Telephone stayed the same at 20,000. Postage stayed the same. Postage, machine rental, the same. Printing went from 5,000 to 3,000. Other communications, printing and advertising stayed the same. Electricity went from 22,000 down to 20,000.
Chief, if I can. We calculated between opening back up Station 59, where we'll have additional electricity down there. But with all these light sensors that are being put in both buildings, we really feel that the electricity usage is going to drop due to the savings of these things not being on for 96 hours straight without people turning them off. So we thought we could come down a little bit on that on electricity. Sorry, Chief, go ahead.
Water and sewage stayed the same. Natural gas the same. Propane the same. Heating oil the same. And other utilities the same. Utilities, gasoline and diesel, we kept that the same. Contracted services, kept that the same. Contracted services for electrical was 1,800 this year, nothing for next year.
That Lexipol that we used for the last couple of years, really, nothing ever happened of it, and the trustees voted to keep the Township handbook as the policymaker there. We are in a contract, it auto-renewed for our convenience in April. So it comes up again this coming April. If you would like it to be zero and us get out of that, we need to notify them. Ms. Edwards, was that like 30 or 90 days before? So we need to decide in the next month or two if the trustees want to keep with Lexipol or abolish it.
Contracted services for the consultant is zero. Contracted services for the exterminator is zero. Legal fees, we kept that the same. Contract services for HR, drug, and background, we kept that the same. Buckeye Business Solutions, 15,000 for next year.
We gave them their own line item. They were under contracted services last year, but we broke them apart.
FirstNet, 12 leads, cell, and laptops, 12,000, kept that the same. Property insurance premium, increased that to from 24,000 this year to 30,000 next year. Liability insurance premium from 10,000 this year to 13,000 next year. Office supplies, station supplies, and EMS supplies, we kept that the same. O2, oxygen, we kept that the same. Operating supplies the same. Small tools and minor equipment the same. Supplies and materials, uniforms, we increased that from 18,000 to 20,000.
The reason being, trustees, the people that have been here a while, their uniforms are 2.5 years old. What I am wearing was given to me the month before the first fair in Montgomery County. So some of them are starting to wear out. You can see in the report every month, I replaced end-of-life cycle 2 uniforms, 17 pieces. So they're starting to wear out, so that's why we went up just a little bit for uniforms.
Dues and fees, we kept that the same. Other expenses, we kept that the same. Life force billing, 16,000 this year, we increased it to 20,000 for next year. Scheduling software, TrackSmart, Active 911, Road 5050, kept that the same.
That is a change. Road is not going to utilize that.
That's strictly us, Chief.
Other expenses for Fire Alliance, Hazmat, WMD, and EMA, that stayed the same. Fire and EMS software, 50/50 road went,
That also is 100% fire.
The reason that 50/50 road were both left on to show you in column C versus E how it is doubled for the fire department because the road is no longer involved in it.
Right.
But that is corrected, because our fire 100% on
went from 3,000 this year to 6,000. SCBA, our breathing apparatus, veg testing, kept that the same at 2,100. Hospitality went from 3,000 this year down to 2,000. Insurance deductible is the same. Other expenses, the pay-core fee is the same. Other expenses, lockbox fees is the same. Other expenses, hotel, 0 for next year. Public education went, stayed the same as this year, 3,000. Other expenses, radio fees, went from 8,000 this year down to 5,000 for next year.
That was because we took a lot of our radios that were duplicated, took them offline from the sheriff's office, so we're no longer paying $25 a month for a radio that's doing nothing. And they are stored away.
Other expenses, the Motorola loan is the same.
I don't know how long that we have left on that, Tracy. How many years we got left on that radio?
Next year's the last, isn't it?
Is
Yeah,
it?
22.
Is it? Okay, thank you.
22?
Uh-huh.
Okay, 22.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Next budget year, I mean.
Other expenses, warning siren is nothing. Other expenses, AFG, 5% match, went from 5,000 this year to 17,500 for next year.
This was because of the grants we're attempting to go after.
The FEMA grant, 4% grant writer fees, went from 10,000 to 14,000. The FEMA grant for the medics is nothing. FEMA grant for SCBA compressor is nothing. FEMA grant for auto extrication is nothing. The grant writer fees went from, stayed the same, $2,500. Ohio EMS stayed the same. Bureau Workman's Comp grant went from 5,000 down to 2,000 for next year. Dispatch fees stayed the same. And the building stayed the same. Next item is machinery, equipment, and furniture. Went from 25,000 this year down to 15,000 for next year. There was no principal for the bonds. Principal payment bonds, fire building, went from 12,500 down to 12,000. Bonds for the administration building went from 15,492 to 18,000. Interest payments for the building went from 12,500 down to 8,400. Interest payments for the administration building went from 15,492 down to 12,600. And the transfers out went from 175,000 to 110,000.
There was one above it, the staff vehicle. It dropped from 10 to 0 due to the vehicle being destroyed.
That's one magnitude. Crashed. And that is it. The budget this year was $1,736,511. For next year, we've got $1,675,424.
So where's the line item for the new equipment.
Transfer out.
Huh?
That's the transfer out line.
Okay. So what are those, gonna be like 4 or 5 payments, like a lease situation or what?
One time a year for 5 years. 76,665 per year. January 1st, January 23rd.
So we're not replacing the totaled vehicle,
Oh. What do you mean?
or is that still in here?
The other vehicle, it's been total.
So that's not being replaced?
Oh, I see what you're saying. He's
Oh, being
asking,
replaced? We'd like for it to be replaced.
But you didn't put a line item in here for that?
No.
it's not a separate line item, might not be the one.
Want to be in the capital?
Yeah, that'll be in the
Capital
capital
improvement.
replacement fund, where the transfer outline is. Will be in that line.
Same as the medics and the engine?
Mhm. I have one more comment. You guys got gasped when you looked at, tax collection fee line 314 or on line 26 on here. But you guys gonna have to put more money in there because the way the auditors want me to take out the tax, the settlement money and put it back in. So I'm gonna
More
have
than the 2,000 you have?
almost like close to 10,000, 12,000, yeah. Because the way the auditors want me to pull, you still have the money in, it's just the way they want me to use that line, to pull money in and pull it out when we get to settlement money.
And then it'll be like 10 in the other departments too, or something, right?
Yeah, because of the way they have to do the settlement on accounting lines. It's
We
not
ran
like you're
short
losing
on
the
that
money.
last year.
Right. It's not like you're losing the money anyway, it's just the way the money has to be moved around. You're still gonna get the income some time of the year, it's just the way we have to take it out and put it back in.
So since you're talking about that, or, vehicles or whatever, the question is, what do we owe chiefs, and maybe you don't know, or Tracy, you can help us, what do we owe on our match for the new medic, for the 2020 grant? What's our match to that, that medic? You guys know?
I'm not sure which medic.
The new one, the AFG new one that they just got awarded, that they're gonna order in 2021.
That'll be 10%.
Is it 10%? And so what, so that figure has to go into this budget,
Okay.
because you have to have that 10% held back somewhere, unless you've got it held back at somewhere else in one of these lines.